So today we're going to be working on this Mazak HCN 8800. Here's the fixture we're going to use. It's just a tombstone with a big ground plate and some components bolted onto it. The part basically hangs off the front of the tombstone so we can do the whole thing in one setup. This is the 560-pound casting that's going to be going on this fixture itself. So I'm just going to show you a little bit how this works. These are the adjustable feet that actually go under the clamps. Because we can't clamp over the 3 machining start points, we adjust these for every part. Screw them in, set the part in, and then screw them out. The 3 start points are here, here, and here. That's where the print specifies the planes created. This bottom rail actually controls the clocking of the casting, which is on the end of the fingers. They specify 2 start points we have to use. This is just a quick little shot of the inserts we keep on hand for running this job. All different styles of feed mill inserts, round inserts, face mill inserts, saw inserts, basically from all different manufacturers, whatever I found that works the best. These are some face mills that have just met their end from insert failure or other jobs that have just caused them to fail. Here we're going to start out with a 3-inch Sumitomo face mill, 45-degree inserts. It's taking an 1/8 inch depth of cut, 15th out per tooth, 1 1/4 step over. Roughs and finishes with the same tool. This isn't really as heavy as I would normally want to run this, but just because of the harmonics generated from this part, when it's being held out from the tombstone, it can only cut so hard. And this seems to give a pretty good amount of process reliability. Next, we're roughing out the insides of these fingers, as we call them. You see the amount of material that's up there above where the casting ends. This is a 2-inch Dormer high feed mill that's running about 300 inches per minute, 50 thou depth of cut. Just roughing the material out in one pass. Just a little slow-mo shot so you can see what the chips look like coming off. It does this on one side, and then it's going to move over to the other side of the finger and do the other side of the casting, as you're seeing here. And just a quick little clip of what the load looks like on the spindle when this is actually running on the machine. Next, using the same cutter, we rough out this weight reduction pocket on the side. Same speeds and feeds as before. This is our 2-inch, as I call it, the I don't want to change the inserts cutter. Just roughing off the clearance on the top of these bosses right here. And the same cutter goes to the bottom and roughs off the clearance on the bottom of the fingers. Next tool up is a 3-inch high feed mill, also from Dormer. This is just roughing off the front of the castings off these boss faces. And then that same 3-inch cutter actually ramps out these bores right here to clear them out for the boring head. And another little clip just to show this tool actually running in practice. I normally do run these tools with coolant, like as you're seeing here. I was just running them dry for video purposes. That same 3-inch high feed mill taking about a 50 thou depth of cut, 35 thou per tooth cut recipe that was on the other part, roughing these fingers off right here. And as you can see, the same 3-inch cutter with the same cut recipe does the same operations on the opposite side, faces it off, and then roughs out these bores for the finished boring head. Next is finishing the inside of the fingers with this custom 1.5-inch 8-flute end mill with an 8-inch length of cut. Next, we're using this dampened 2-inch diameter 15-inch projection shell mill holder to go on the back side of the tombstone to rough off this center face that I couldn't get to from the front. This tool takes a really, really light depth of cut because it wants to chatter with any extra amount of radial force that it gets. This is just a basic 2-inch Ingersoll quad drill using to pre-drill out the ends of the holes in the ends of these fingers. Here we have our standard 5/8 5-flute end mill with 2 1/8 length of cut, just roughing out a bunch of different bores all over the part. Here it is roughing the finger that was just pre-drilled out from 2 inches out to 2 inches 300 basically. This tool is not really running extremely fast or hard just because I want the part to stay relatively stable while it's machining these features. Next we come in with our standard 1/2 inch 5 flute end mill just to rough and finish the 2 counter bores on the 2 faces of the front of the part. Next up, we're roughing and finishing those same counter bores but on the back side with this 1 inch 5 flute end mill from Helical in a long shrink fit extension holder that we actually got in an auction. It minimizes the run out on a tool this long. And here you can see why it actually has to be that long. As it roughs out that center pin bore from the back side, the face of the spindle actually gets very close. The next operation is just a 1 inch carbide 5 flute end mill that's basically roughing off little clearances on the side of these pads right here, just so they don't have clearance issues when they assemble them. Then the same end mill indexes over to 270 degrees and finishes the floor and the walls on this weight reduction pocket. It's not really going very aggressively, but I didn't really want it to move the part again. Here's just a slow-mo shot of some chips coming off. And then comes every machinist's favorite thing to watch, the 3D surfacing. This here is a 2 inch Seco button cutter that I'm basically using to surface all the compound radiuses, chamfers, and features all over the rest of the part that I can actually get to. It's on an 8 inch projection holder, so I have to take it a little easier with this cutter than I normally would, but it still leaves an excellent finish on all the surfaced radiuses. Here you see I'm actually machining the backside radius on this arm, and I indexed the B-axis to 80 degrees to leave 10 degrees of clearance, as you see here, so the tool actually can walk down an angled surface instead of walking down a straight wall. And here the same tool is roughing and finishing out this slot through the back of the part, as you see here. Here's a different button cutter. This one's a 2 inch Mitsubishi one with a lot more relief behind the insert so that I can use it for boring out these bottom holes for our plunge mill. And a T-slot cutter that we're using to rough out these backside counter bores behind these holes on the ends of the fingers. So this here is a very unique process. We bring a shell mill holder through the hole and you install a plunge mill head onto the shell mill arbor inside the part. We have to do this because the hole behind the one that the holder is going through is actually an inch bigger in diameter than the hole that you have to fit the tool through. So you can't have enough swing to fit the face mill through. Here I'm just showing that I installed a macro into the program where you can't push the cycle start button to start the machine until you change one of the macro variables here, as I'll show you. It'll just loop back to the beginning. That way the machine can't possibly start unless you go in here and change this. So I change the variable from a 0 to a 1, push cycle start, and the machine begins to cut. After the machining process is done, you have to remove the face mill and then it moves to the other side and you do the same thing again. This is another one of those 2 inch Mitsubishi button cutters that's roughing and finishing off the sidewalls on a much longer extension, because as you see here, it has to go way through the tombstone to reach through, and it also has to surface these radiuses on the underside of the wall. Then we add some nice chamfers on the fronts of these counter bores. They're actually called out as being 3mm chamfers, so I do them in multiple passes to not wear the chamfer mill out. And adding a nice little edge brake chamfer onto the front of these counter bores on the ends of the fingers, and then using the same chamfer mill, we add a nice 90-degree chamfer on this through bore right here. So what does any programmer do when they don't have a long enough chamfer mill? They surface the chamfers. This is just a 3/8 end mill with a 15th radius on it that I'm actually using to surface all the chamfers on the back holes. As you can see here, we're getting down there on clearance with the back of the tombstone with this tool, surfacing this 15-degree lead-in chamfer on the center bore here. And a nice boring head to finish bore out these bores right here on the ears. Then at the end of the program, we call up this 2-inch button cutter again and rough out the opposite side's weight reduction pocket. We do this at the end because the spindle nose gets pretty close to the bottom of the part, and we actually had one part move, and it threw off the positions of everything that was finished before and after that happened. And just to let everyone know, I have omitted a lot of machining operations on this part, just because they're kind of boring to watch. And people said they wanted to see some of the difficulties in machining these parts. This was actually this part that I just filmed what happened to the inserts about 10 seconds after I shut the camera off. So this part from a fixturing point of view is pretty boring because I didn't actually design the fixture myself. We actually worked in collaboration with our tool room. I kind of told them how I wanted to approach the part, how I wanted to machine it, and they basically came up with the idea of how to make it and gave it to me. I just drew up the tombstone to make sure I had clearance with my tools, basically to machine the part. There's a couple features on here that are difficult. The position tolerances between all the bores are all really tight. That's why I did it all in one holding. So I'm just showing here again. Here's just the 3 starting points that I modeled. And basically the part just floats up in midair. So as we move over into the cam environment here, you see my work shift is in the middle of nowhere, but it's actually not. It's actually aligned with the top face of that top pad and the front of the part where the starting points are and the center of the actual casting where those forks are. So here's just the roughing and finishing passes of that 3-inch shell mill. So just roughing and finishing the front pad right there with the same face mill. Now here's a feature in Fusion I don't see many people use. I used a 2D contour to rough out the insides of these forks, but instead of doing a bunch of air passes where it wasn't going to touch anything, I selected the top geometry as the highest point and the bottom as the lowest, and just the inside of the forks for my geometry for the 2D contour. But as you can see here, when I go into the trim, I actually offset the outside profile of the part 3/8 of an inch, selected that side face as my plane, and then when I hit OK, it trims away all the extra passes in the air that wouldn't have actually cut anything, as opposed to right here where it's just cutting air when it's not actually touching the material. Next up, that same 2-inch feed mill roughs off this back face, which I didn't show in the video before. I trimmed out some of the tool paths in the actual program earlier in the video because a lot of them are kind of boring to watch. So here's that stackable cutter roughing and finishing all the clearances off on the top of all the bosses, the ends of all the fingers, and then that same cutter actually roughs that back pad. We move over to the 3-inch high feed mill, a 2D contour to rough the wall, a 2D contour with roughing passes to rough the face, a bore tool path to take all the material out of that ear right there. Generally on high feed mills, I just set the pitch to whatever I want the max step down instead of a ramp angle. That way I don't end up cutting too much material. Here you see roughing that bottom face off, and then the same 2D contours and bore cycle to rough off the other ear and the other face on the bottom of the finger. I didn't show these ones in the beginning, but this is just a 2.5-inch face mill that's finishing the bottom of the finger, finishing the wall, finishing the face on that bore, then finishing the face on the opposite side and doing all the same operations again. Then we come up with that big 1.5-inch end mill, finish the inside of the fingers, the 2 inside faces, and finish the relief on the tops of these 2 bores right here, along with the back side of the 1 pad. Then these are all the tool paths for that really long dampened shell mill. A 2D adaptive to rough out that top boss right there. You'll see in here that I'm actually taking a really, really light cut. I just selected the geometry as an open contour so that it comes in from the top. I'm actually using a 2D adaptive right there to finish the same face. Then another 2D adaptive and 2D contour to finish the back face. And that same shell mill actually surfaces that radius, which I actually used an offset patch to make larger. Because this is a casting, it never matches the 3D CAD model. We pre-drill out that top pinhole, then this is that 2-inch Ingersoll quad drill that you saw. Then we just start a series of 2D adaptive and 2D pocket tool paths to rough out all these different bores and counter bores with the 5/8 end mill. Some 2D contours to finish them, 2D pockets to finish the floors, and it basically goes through the entire part with this tool, roughing and finishing the ends of the fingers. Then here's that 1/2-inch end mill, roughing and finishing the 2 counter bores on the front face and finishing the front bore. Then there's that long 1-inch end mill and that long shrink fit holder that's roughing and finishing those 2 and roughing out that press bore. Some more standard 2D contours with multiple depths just to clean up all the reliefs on the sides of the part. And then a 2D pocket to finish the floor, 2D contour for the wall. Now all of these tool paths are basically for an operation I didn't show. It's actually a 4-inch Kennametal saw that goes in there and finishes those inside of the back faces. Here we have all the surfacing of the radiuses on the front pads and the surfacing of the radius on the back where I offset the B 10 degrees. There's the clearance you can see. You can see here in my tool orientation, I'm actually at -80 instead of 90. That's where the 10 degrees comes from instead of 90 degrees, which would be perpendicular. Then that same cutter here is actually going to go on the back side. I'm using a 2D adaptive to rough the slot out, 2D contour both ways to finish the slot, some contours in order to rough off the extra stock. Then I'm using a 3D contour to surface those radiuses with the same tool, finishing the face, finishing the radius on the bottom. Here's the rough the radius, finish the radius, rough, finish. And now I'm coming down here with that second button cutter. These are my bore tool paths to rough those. The T-slot cutter roughing the counter bores at 2 different depths on both sides. Then next comes a custom carbide saw just to finish the walls and the floor of that counter bore right there. Now this is where I install the plunge mill, and you'll see if I zoom in on this right here from the front, I have the retract plane set really low. It never comes out of the inside of the hole, because if I did set the retract plane up where it normally would, it would rip the face mill right off the holder. So here's the next tool, that button cutter roughing the faces and radiuses of that feature on the back. This is a custom 15-degree saw we had ground. This just puts 15-degree chamfers on the backs of all the bores, as you can see on the finger down there, both sides, the back of that bore, and both bores on this finger. Then we have a 551 sumo cam putting the holes in. My chamfer mill, which is putting all the chamfers on all the features. Chamfer on the counter bore, chamfer on the through bore. Same thing on the opposite side. Then we have a custom end mill ground with a 15-degree chamfer on it. That puts 15-degree chamfers on the front, and my surfacing of the back chamfers. You'll see here I actually used a bore tool path for this because I actually find it gives a better, smoother tool path than a contour or scallop. Finishing the back hole, which is actually larger than the front, which is why that tool was relieved. My boring head, a 2D adaptive just to rough out the side, pocket to finish the floor, contour for the walls, and finishing the radiuses, and then the last relief on the side. Now to the normal person looking at this part, you wouldn't think this, but as I select all these, this part actually has 164 different operations in order to make it. One of the other things I don't normally see people use in Fusion is offset patches for surfacing. As you can see here, I'm going to show them all, but I basically projected all the surfaces and extended them all larger than the surface that you're actually surfacing. This leaves the chance that you actually have a step on the outside of your features to be almost none, because it always goes past where the surfaces are that you're doing. I use this almost every time I surface any feature on a part, and it always helps leave me with a much better finish because your transitions are never on the material. As always, thank you everyone for watching. I always welcome any comments, any suggestions, any criticism in the comments section. I always try to answer as many as I can get to. But I just figured I'd show you a little project I'm doing, machining this F-22 Raptor out of solid aluminum. Might make this into a video when I do a second one, but I haven't finished this one up yet. So, as always, I'll see you next week.